Live from New York, this is WIUR Radio.
All right, everyone, welcome back to Sports Pulse Podcast. My name is Akeem Taylor. Unfortunately, I have Anthony Green with me. He's at the airport right now, coming back from Thanksgiving break. Today, we're going to talk about Chelsea and Arsenal game this past weekend. We're going to talk about some Premier League games that are happening actually after this podcast later this week. And then we're going to talk about the UFC. So let's talk about the Arsenal and London Derby breakdown. Last Sunday was the 41st meeting of this Premier League rendition of the London Derby. The game was incredibly physical early on. There was 4 yellow cards by the 27th minute. Martin Zubimendi got the first and the 5th. Marco Correa got the 2nd and 11th minute. And then Moises Caicedo in the 38th minute absolutely made a horrendous challenge on Mikel Merino of Arsenal, giving Arsenal a 10-man advantage for the rest of the game. Arsenal dominated possession 62%, but struggled to break down Chelsea throughout the game. Chelsea was very, very compact in a 10-man defense. To be fair to Chelsea, I mean, they were quite relentless throughout the game. Even then, they had 10 men. They didn't give Arsenal any breaks throughout the game. In the 48th minute, in the second half, Trevor Chalobah scored a header from Reece James' corner to give Chelsea the lead, but it wouldn't last for long. In the 59th minute, Mikel Merino equalized for Arsenal with a header from Bukayo Saka cross. After that goal, Arsenal were trying to relentlessly try to get a goal and a game winner, but Chelsea just held on with the low block whenever they got the ball in possession. They'll try to make a few runs on the wing with Garnacho, who they subbed on in the second half. They tried to heave it up to Liam Delap, who was subbed on in the second half for open play. Arsenal made those changes, bring on Madueke and Odegaard before the equalizer, and then try to bring on Gyökeres after the goal. They're trying to get, potential late-minute winner. Madueke flashed across the box in the 88th minute in the right-hand side in the penalty area, putting his delivery just behind Gyökeres, who was only got his heel on the ball and laid off to Merino. Alert to the situation, Spanish goalkeeper Robert Sanchez pulled his foot out, and then obviously just by like a hair got to the ball before Gyökeres did, and Gyökeres clattered into him and getting a yellow. Unfortunately, with that draw, which feels like a loss as an Arsenal fan playing against a 10-man team when you have a man advantage, especially against a team against Chelsea, who were actually fantastic that week. Had a 3-0 thrashing in Champions League against Barcelona. We had a 3-0 thrashing against Bayern Munich in Champions League. Smashed Tottenham Hotspur 4-1 the Sunday prior. So this feels like almost a loss, but still puts Arsenal 5 points ahead of Man City. It puts them 6 points ahead of Chelsea, who are in 24th, 24 points in third place. And then obviously this upcoming week with a couple games tomorrow, actually not tomorrow, today, you have Fulham versus Man City. Fulham, I mean, they've been caused problems with their new signings at home, especially with the home crowd element in their favor, but I do expect City to get a narrow win, especially with Erling Haaland, who's been an absolute goal machine this season. Fulham are winning list against Man City across 21 games, 0 wins, 2 draws, 19 losses. Last time they drew in 2011, Paramount Plus pundit Micah Richards was playing for Man City, so it's quite a long time that Fulham got a result against them. Bournemouth versus Everton. Bournemouth are having a string of decent home wins this season. They're undefeated at home, 4 wins, 2 draws. Semenyo's been world-class this season, and the emergence of the 19-year-old French wonder kid, Eli Kroupi, at striker has been fantastic for them. And then Everton, on the other hand, they have some good performances this past couple weeks, beating Manchester United away with 10 men, getting a red early in the first half and winning that game. And then they beat Fulham at home 2-0, but they're coming off a 4-1 drumming against Newcastle at home, so they need to pick up form. I probably would favor Bournemouth because they're the undefeated home team. Everton do kind of struggle on the road. They only have 2 wins on the road against quality opposition. When you look at the other games in this fixture for this week, you have Newcastle versus Tottenham. Newcastle is really tough at St. James Park, even though they're 11th place right now in the standings as I'm speaking. Tottenham just are a better team on the road, which is surprising to say the least. You know that under their new manager, Thomas Frank, they've been, resilient defensively, but they struggled to score goals. But on the road, they've been fantastic. But St. James Park is a different place. Walter Mott has been fantastic. Jacob Murphy has been the revelation off the bench. So is Harvey Barnes. Like they've got a very, very deep squad. And just looking at it from my perspective, Tonali, Jollington, Livermento, Malik Tiao was one of the signings of the summer for Newcastle. Has been absolutely fantastic at center half. Obviously, they brought in a former Arsenal goalkeeper in Ramsdale. They swap him between him and Nick Pope, Dan Burn, Lewis Hall. It's going to be a tough matchup, but I think since Newcastle are at home, they have Wick Maltamada playing fantastic. Newcastle do have a bunch of injuries with Ben Botman, Osula, and Wisa, and Kieran Trippier out. Tottenham have a bunch of injuries on loan as well, but I think it might be a draw. Honestly, in my opinion, I'm not going to pick a Tottenham win, but I think at the very least it'll be a highly anticipated draw between those two. And then on Wednesday, tomorrow, we have Arsenal versus Brentford. Brentford's been absolutely horrendous on the road. They've only had one win on the season on the road against West Ham. Obviously, Arsenal definitely want to go snatch some points up after Man City smash Fulham later today. I probably would favor a either 2-0 win or 3-0 win to Arsenal against Brentford. Brighton versus Aston Villa is a really interesting matchup as well. Brighton, they've been looking good recently, beating Nottingham Forest on the road 2-0, beating Brentford 2-1, having a draw against Crystal Palace, smashing Leeds, and then their last loss was against Arsenal, away at Arsenal. And then Aston Villa has probably been one of the hottest teams all across the football. I mean, 5 games undefeated in the last 5 games, beat Wolves in a really shaky game. They should have performed a lot better, but they got the win regardless. 2-1 win against Young Boys, 2-1 win against Leeds on the road. Morgan Rogers had a brace in that game. It was absolutely fantastic. They smashed Bournemouth 4-0 in an absolute battering. That was a fantastic performance against Bournemouth. And then mark up Tel Aviv in the Europa League. They beat them 2-0. Based off the two teams in form, it might be a draw. You have 4th place versus 5th place. 2 points separate Aston Villa from Brighton. Brighton have been in good form. Aston Villa has been fantastic. But I think most of the time Brighton do score in the first half, which is the highest rate in the league. 79% of the time they've scored their goals in the first half. Aston Villa did struggle last week against Wolves. Brighton looked good against Nottingham Forest, another team that's towards the bottom of the table. If I had to base off that performance, I'd probably lean slightly towards Brighton at home. Burnley versus Crystal Palace, I think it's pretty straightforward. Burnley is the last place team in the Prime. Crystal Palace, I mean, they have a bowl of fantastic players. Jean-Philippe Mateta, Ismail Assar, and Mark Gahey should be the drumming from Crystal Palace, probably 3-0 win. Wolves versus Nottingham Forest, a relegation battle. 2 teams that looked poor last week, but under new manager Sean Dyche, Nottingham Forest have kind of established a better defensive mindset under Sean Dyche. First loss was against last week against Brighton, unfortunately losing 2-0. But prior to that, 3-0 win, then beating Liverpool, which is probably the win of the season for them, at Anfield, which is impressive, and then drumming Leeds 3-1. If I'm going based off performance recently, Nottingham Forest are 3-3-7 on the season, 3 wins, 3 draws, 7 losses. While Wolves are absolutely winless. 0 wins, 2 draws, 11 losses. I would favor Forest in that game very heavily. Leeds against Chelsea, another team that's towards the bottom of the table. Chelsea, like I said, fantastic week for them. Thrashed Barcelona and then got away with the draw when they had 10 men against Arsenal. I'd favor them to thrash Leeds. And then Liverpool against Sunderland. Sunderland has probably been the revelation this season. I mean, no one expected them to be even part of the top 8, let alone top 6 right now with the massive signings that they made, bringing in Granit Xhaka, bringing in Simon Adingra, bringing in all these massive players that, are actually impacting their team in the right way. Brian Brobby, Cutretta, Mukiele, Mark Gui. I mean, not Mark Gui. Ronaldo from Atletico Madrid. All these players have been impactful. Ballard, who's a former Arsenal Academy player as well. They've been absolutely fantastic. Liverpool's been struggling. They've got their first win out of, it seemed like 4 games against West Ham. They were on a 3-0 bounce, losing the 3-0 to Man City and Nottingham Forest, and they got bounced in the Champions League 4-1 at home. They got to look to pick up momentum, but Sunderland is not going to give them an easy game. So just based off of form, I think it might be a 2-2 draw against Liverpool for Sunderland. And then to recap for that final week, we have on Thursday, Manchester United versus West Ham. Like I mentioned before, Man United lost against Everton at home with Everton being down a man, which was it's abysmal performance by Man United. But they bounced back to get a 2-1 win against Crystal Palace after down 1-0 in the first half. So I think that motivation going into that game against West Ham, who's been very, very poor this season, who are 17th in the table, I favor Manchester United. And then after the break, I'm going to go into talking about UFC and making UFC picks for this weekend, UFC 323.
Untouchable, unstoppable.
This is WIUR Sports Radio.
Hi, I'm Robbie Basil, president of WIUR Radio, and I hope you're enjoying today's show. Have you ever wanted to call the biggest games, the biggest moments for the biggest names for Iona Athletics? Then the newly founded WIUR Sports Radio is the place to be. Launched in January of 2025, our goal is to try and get broadcasters here at Iona an opportunity to learn, succeed, and get a chance to be on air. From getting to call the big moments at the hack,
Dinkins trying to go to the rack. Denied. Yafet Mundi.
to seeing the crack of the bat at City Park.
The line drive into left field, around third, and it kicks away. The Gales are going to win it in 10.
We make those moments happen on our brand new WIUR Sports Radio platform on Mixer. If you're interested, feel free to reach out to me via email or to the rest of my e-board to join the club. We are WIUR Sports Radio, the new home of Iona Athletics. Now, back to the show on WIUR, Iona University Radio.
All right, back. We're going to talk about some UFC 323 picks. We have Marav Darashvili versus Peter Yan. 2 is the main headliner. And then the co-main is Andre Pantoja versus Joshua Van. Also on the card, you have Brandon Moreno versus Tatsuro Taira, Henry Cejudo versus Peyton Talbot, Jan Bloho versus Bogdan Guskov. And then in the prelims are pretty stacked as well. Grant Dawson versus Manuel Torres, Terrence McKinney versus Chris Duncan, Macy Barber versus Karini Silva, and Nazim Sadikov versus Faris Ziham. I'm going to start from the prelims up. Sadikov versus Ziham. I think Ziham is a more well-rounded fighter compared to Sadikov. Sadikov's ring IQ is a bit new to the UFC. It's Faris Ziham trains in that camp with Cyril Gane in France. He's an elite striker. He has pretty good jiu-jitsu. I favor Ziham in that fight. Macy Barber versus Karini Silva. Macy Barber only has 2 losses on her career. She's been on a massive winning streak, absolutely dominating in the last couple fights. Karini Silva is pretty well-rounded, but once it gets to that next echelon of fighters, she's constantly lost to them. I'm a favor Macy Barber. Terrence McKinney versus Chris Duncan. Chris Duncan has been absolutely on a roll in his fight against Mintabek Orubai. If you've never seen that fight, search up that fight. It's one of the fights of the year last year. Absolute bloodfest. But Terrence McKinney, it's been, highly touted prospect, but every time he's faced an elite prospect on his own level, they've matched his level and they've knocked him out or finished him. I'd probably predict the same thing here. I think Chris Duncan can get a finish there. Grant Dawson versus Manuel Torres. Grant Dawson's probably one of the most boringest fighters in the whole entire UFC. I mean, he doesn't really have much power. He's a jiu-jitsu guy, just wrestles, sits on you, while Manuel Torres is a really, really skilled fighter, just knocked out Drew Dober in his last fight. And Drew Dober, if you watch his fights, that dude has a granite chin. Fought Chris Duncan, who I mentioned before, finished him, finished Frank Camacho, fought Ignacio Bonamundez, who's one of the taller lightweights in the division, and they went to war for a round and he got knocked out. But I think I'll probably go with the dog here and Manuel Torres to beat Grant Dawson. And then the bottom of the main card, you have Jan Blachowicz, the former UFC light heavyweight champion, versus newcomer Bogdan Guskov. Bogdan Guskov is coming off a win against Nikita Krylov. Bogdan Guskov in his debut didn't look very, very well in that fight against No Time Ozdemir, Volkan Ozdemir, to say it properly. I mean, he was swinging wild, and then he got caught and then taken down and finished pretty quickly. Nikita Krylov, well-rounded fighter, but Nikita Krylov's coming off a knockout 3 fights before that. So I'm not going to really favor Bogdan Guskov against the former champion, even though Jan Blachowicz has been, I mean, kind of I would say the grandpa of the division. Obviously, he's 42 years old, but he got the belt what 3-4 years ago against against Dominic Reyes in a massive fight in 2020 when COVID was happening, and then he had that fantastic performance against Israel Adesanya. Got finished by Glover Teixeira. Finished Alexander Rakic and by was a knee injury, but he was winning that fight. And then the Magomed Ankalaev fight, he was losing the first round of that fight, and then turned it up in the second half and made adjustments. Obviously, he's coming off two loss streak against Carlos Ulberg and Alex Pereira, which, to be fair, I mean, losing Alex Pereira is not that bad. And then losing Carlos Ulberg, he's going to be next in line for the title shot. But just based off experience and championship level experience of Jan Blachowicz, and he's more well rounded than Bogdan Guskov, I'd probably favor Jan Blachowicz to probably get a TKO win probably in the second round. Peyton Talbot versus Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo, who in his last fight fought Song Yadong in Seattle, was losing that fight for the majority of the rounds, and then the eye poke absolutely happened, which was unfortunate. But before that, I mean, he got dominated by Merab in the title eliminator fight, and he was absolutely out for several years before that. And then he had that close fight against Aljamain Sterling, which I thought he won, but now he's facing young up and coming Peyton Talbot. Obviously, Peyton Talbot is one of the highest prospects in the bantamweight division with a lot of popularity. Obviously, with if you know with Frank Ocean and stuff like that. But just based off of form and in their last couple fights, I'd probably slightly favor the younger Peyton Talbot. And Brandon Moreno versus Tatsuro Taira, which is going to be a really interesting matchup. Brandon Moreno is obviously the former flyweight champion, former two-time flyweight champion. Obviously, his only losses in his career against the top echelon guys. And he lost the belt to Pantoja, who's the current reigning champion now. Lost to Brandon Royval, who's the current number one contender in the division. And then his last couple fights, he had a fantastic performance against Amir Albazi and Steve Erceg in two main events and absolutely dominated him for 5 rounds. So now he's basically lined up for a number one contender shot against Tatsuro Taira, who's a new up-and-comer in the UFC, who fought, if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to mispronounce his name, Park Hyung Sung, who is a relatively new newcomer in the UFC as well. When you look at the elite opposition that he's fought recently, I don't think he has fought anyone to the level of Brandon Moreno outside of Brandon Royval, which in that fight he took that fight to 5 rounds, lost by split decision, and then beat Alex Perez before that. So this obviously is his toughest fight of his career. I'm still going to probably favor Brandon Moreno just because he's more well-rounded. Tatsuro Taira is mainly a grappler with some decent striking with KO power. And I just think Brandon Moreno's last couple of fights have been looking more refreshed and refined compared to Taira. And then Alejandro Pantoja versus Joshua Van. Pantoja, if you watch his fights, he's a grappler, but also he has really, really good takedowns, great jiu-jitsu, good striking. Even though he's not the most elite, cleanest striker on the feet, he's one of the best fighters in the world against Joshua Van, who had a fight of the year against Brandon Royval. I suggest you guys watch that. It's a really, really tough fight to pick, but just based off of Joshua Van's lack of fighters that he's fought that can really take him down and just wear him down and wrestle him and just exhaust him over 5 rounds. It's the first time he's ever been in a 5-round fight. I'd probably favor Pantoja because, I mean, Pantoja is one of the best in the world. In my opinion, he's pound for pound number 1 in the UFC. Alongside the guy who's in the main event, Merab the Machine Dvalishvili versus Peter Yan. Peter Yan's a former champion of himself, obviously lost to Aljamain Sterling by disqualification in their first fight. And then the second fight, it was a close split decision. But Peter Yan's been on a pretty good winning streak after losing that belt to Aljamain Sterling. He beat Song Yadong, like I said, beat Davis Figueiredo for 5 rounds and took a late-minute replacement fight against Marcus McGee off of actually a 2 weeks' notice against Marcus McGee and looked dominant in that fight. And now he's going to face Merab Dvalishvili for the second time. The first time they fought each other back in 2023 in March 11th, he got absolutely dominated by a unanimous decision. It was 50-45. It was very, very lackluster attacking from Peter Yan. Couldn't really get a striking game off because Merab was all over him. And Merab is, like I said, similar to Pantoja, just relentless, just stays in your face, doesn't give you time to breathe. Good striking, great grappling, great jiu-jitsu. It's really, really hard to see anybody that can even beat these dudes. Maybe there's a slight chance if Peter Yan has improved his takedown defense, which he slightly has against Davis Figueiredo, but Davis Figueiredo still was able to take him down for certain moments of that fight. But I'll probably slightly favor again Merab in the rematch. Probably go by the split decision this time, outside compared to the absolute domination the first time around. But I'm in favor of Merab, and I think Merab's going to put himself in the pound for pound fight. Hopefully, it goes up to 145 in a fights for another belt and becomes a 2-division champion. And I think that's it for me. My name is Keen Taylor. Follow me on all socials, Keen Taylor _ on Instagram, Keen Taylor _ on TikTok for my other takes around football, basketball, boxing, UFC, anything. I mean, I'm pretty knowledgeable about every single sport outside of, I'd say, golf maybe. But God, you guys enjoy the show and have a great week and enjoy the holidays.
This is WIUR Radio.
Hi, I'm Morgan Beastie from the Ionian, and I hope you're enjoying today's show. Are you looking for the latest scoop on campus news, sports, and more? Check out the Ionian University's very own award-winning student newspaper. We keep you up to date with everything happening on and off campus. Want to know about the big game, the latest campus event? It's all in the Ionian. Join the conversation. Read, write, and get involved. Visit www.theionian.org or pick up a copy around campus. Stay informed, stay connected. Now, back to WIUR, Iona University Radio.